Hello, and welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, powered by Analyst Investors. I'm your host, David Olivencia, co-founder of Analyst Investors, and a passionate advocate for leveraging innovation and technology to drive success. In this podcast, we'll dive into the strategies that top leaders, investors, and entrepreneurs are using to navigate and thrive in this era of accelerating technological change. Whether you're looking to lead more effectively, make smarter investments, or understand how to harness disruptive technologies for exponential growth, this podcast is for you. Each episode will feature conversations with visionary thinkers, industry pioneers, and innovative leaders who are redefining what's possible in today's rapidly evolving world. So if you're ready to start and stay ahead of this curve, let's get started. This is Exponential Growth. Well, hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Exponential Growth Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, somebody I got to meet through this Recast Accelerator program for general partners of venture funds. We recently, myself and my partner Adela Cepeda, we just closed a $20 million venture fund, Analyst Ventures Fund 1. But as part of this program, I get the honor to work with a kind of a cohort in our team. And I have one of those team members with us. She's has an undergraduate degree from Eastern Michigan University. And, my three kids were born in Michigan, so very, very familiar with that area. And then an MBA from the University of Dayton and a long distinguished career in tech commercialization, technology, but also strength in agriculture. And we're going to talk more about that. Welcome to the podcast, Karen LeVert.
Yes.
Excellent. So how are you today, Karen?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And you talked about Recast, and a plus for me too is getting connected with you. So it's been a really good program from that perspective.
Excellent. So so it's exponential growth. We like to talk about trends, investments, how do you lead in all these times of exponential change? But we really like to start out and talk about you and tell the audience a little bit about yourself. I know a bit about you, but I don't know everything, and to the extent you want to share, but we'd love to hear your story, because from what the things I know about your story, it's amazing, and all the great things you're doing with your venture fund. But please tell everyone your story, Karen.
Yeah, I don't know if amazing is the word, though. We all have that, right? I think we if we get an opportunity to talk about how the roads lead to here, there are there's a lot of brightness in that. So I'm Karen LeVert, and as David mentioned, my last name is French for the green, and I won't say more about that. I'll end with what type of funds we're managing and for what sector that relates to the green. But I grew up in a really small town in just outside of Columbus, Ohio, called Johnstown, and surrounded by a lot of corn and soybean farms, and had a lot of classmates that were generational farmers. My mom and dad, I think about them now, and it's like, gosh, how influential they are. My dad passed about a little over 20 years ago, but he was in the electronics. He was had a technical degree in electronics, and my mother a nurse. So here I was in kind of some farm country, and then parents that had those professions, and I kind of followed in my dad's path. I was really good in math and loved that, and when it came time for college, as David, you mentioned, I went to Eastern Michigan. I had a business major with a concentration in computer science. So that allowed me to be a
cool combo, by the way, really cool combo.
What was people can't see me, but if you see a picture of me, you can see I have a lot of blonde hair from age. And so I was one of the first, it was one of the first kind of IT degrees, really. I could have majored in computer science and business, and Eastern was one of those first schools that had that combo major. And so that kind of has really done well for me leading to here. So I majored with that degree. I was a programmer on these big mainframe computers with COBOL, and I got hired by Nationwide Insurance. And Nationwide, my background is a twisting stream, but I could have stayed right there and had a wonderful career at Nationwide Insurance. I started as a programmer and went up through the ranks as senior programmer and a systems manager, and then I got an MBA and I was a controller, and then they moved me to North Carolina to run a 500-person service center, and that was kind of the opening of when you talk about lived experiences. I grew up in the Midwest. I went to college in Michigan, and then I moved to North Carolina. So just that, even that difference in a corporate relocation from a climate perspective, and just it was more diverse. All of a sudden, my eyes were more open to, and which opened my eyes too to, I don't know if I'm going to work at Nationwide my entire career.
Open your
And
eyes a little bit too much, maybe.
that's exactly right. I was fast tracking to be a top exec at Nationwide by that time, and really realized that, hey, may want to try my hand at being an entrepreneur. And at that time it was interesting because I always knew I could go back to corporate America, but I felt like that was my time to be an entrepreneur. And I took a leave of absence and started a franchise company. We could do 1,000 podcasts on what I've done between then and now, but suffice it to say, after starting that company, I met someone, actually was the dean of the School of Engineering at Duke, and I really got involved in tech commercialization out of universities, and I loved it then. I love it now. I feel our universities are the backbone of innovation, and I had an opportunity to look for early stage research, and we built companies based on that, and several of them. If you've been listening to David's podcast, for sure, you hear the word exits. And so we had an opportunity to have some of those companies sell. And kind of fast forward then, you heard me say I grew up around a lot of corn and soybean farms. Someone said to me, have you ever thought about doing this tech commercialization work in agriculture? And I just felt like I came full circle. I get goosebumps when I think about it now. It was like, oh, yeah, farms. But now, and I have a technical background, and no matter what's happening in the world, we have to eat. So this is maybe something that I should be paying attention to. So we started commercializing early stage research in agriculture, and then quickly realized there was not very much capital. And then I'm like, gosh, I got to do something about this. So you can tell already I'm someone that's like, oh, there's a problem here. I need to find a way.
Right. Just not talk about the problem or admire the problem, right? Take some action around it. Yeah.
Yeah, which led to starting a venture fund. And so my fund is LeVert Ventures. My last name is, I said, French for the green. And we do 100% investing in agricultural technologies. And we really are investing at that very early stage of some of the companies raising their first funds. And so that's what I'm doing today. I'm managing partner. I'm in North Carolina, live specifically in Asheville, and then we have offices in Research Triangle Park as well.
Oh, excellent. There was one, there's several synergies, but there was one that caught my attention. The higher education and then them being the innovation and the backbone, 110% agree. And when I got my MBA at Notre Dame, it was a lot around that. It was really, that was kind of like the thesis of the capstone project, was that Notre Dame specifically, but all of the universities, they create all this great research and tech and IP, but they have a horrible time of doing tech transfer and all that kind of stuff. And so one of my roles was somewhat similar in that it was like, how do you take the innovation that's happening in professors' heads and then begin to commercialize it and take it out? And for me, it was part of the seeds of also helping me more appreciate startups and early stage and venture and innovation, and to your point, just the strength that our higher education system has in America, how it fuels innovation. So I thought that was just a point that brought something home to me. So thank you for sharing that, Karen. All right, so hey, so let's talk about trends, right? You have an interesting lens. Your background in insurance, this ag tech space is amazing, right? A lot of things going on there. I mean, I've heard of some interesting things. But you also see a lot of other things out there. So kind of our audience out there from your lens, what are some key trends that you see that our audience should be paying attention to? Exponential trends that are things that are growing rapidly.
Couple things come to mind, and I don't know if it's as much as something growing rapidly, but areas we have to really pay attention to, and they're growing because sometimes of challenges. I use this phrase sometimes: when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I talk a lot about agriculture because that's what I love and what I do. From a crop perspective, I think, most of what we eat, we grow or with plants, or we do it with animals. Like we take care of animals for livestock and with production animals. The ability for us to make sure that our plants can withstand more heat, different types of pests and diseases. This is something in the ag space that's a real trend of how we're going to manage. How do we help with heat stress? Our planet's warmer than it's been, no matter your political beliefs. One, two, because of the change in temperatures across our planet, we have different pests in different places. So pests that were never in Michigan in the past are there now, that like grandparents never dealt with because of the change in climate and their ability to survive there. And then on the disease front, just like in humans, when we have new diseases, and we've got to always be combating something that's living and growing. So these are, to me, trends we're going to continue to see, and it's how do we manage these pest diseases and on the heat side, and do it more naturally, not with the pesticides of the past, but in more natural ways. And I've seen just a tremendous amount of, can we disrupt reproductive systems of pests, and are there certain strains of bacteria we can use that are natural occurring to control disease? And so that to me is a trend, something that's more on that encompasses more than just ag is energy.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about, I watch, and I'm really a proponent. We invest in indoor agriculture. You look at the vertical farms, et cetera, but we have this beautiful sunshine, and then we take the crops and we bring them inside, and we have to use light for them to grow. And so that's power. We've got energy. And then secondly, we talk about AI and ML so easily. We've got these data centers all over. Everything's in the cloud. It's not really in the cloud, right? They're on the same servers. They're just all banded together in some place that needs to be cooled and heat. And so that is a real issue. I think that we aren't spending enough time. And from an investment perspective, I mean, I'm really like, okay, if we see technologies that are really, it's like the IoT of, on the power side, or ways that we can, use energy more efficiently, we've got to do that. And so though that's a hot area, and it spans everything that we do.
Yeah, it's the exponential, like just the exponential growth and what data centers are consuming in energy is a topic that I'm actually I'm getting ready to write on as well. And then there was this whole, these whole, call it, I don't know what's building farms or whatever, with vertical farms, I think is what you call them. And I've seen those, and it's amazing what they're going. And you can see, like, even in some cities around cities that have maybe had come on some tough times. I think there's opportunities to use that to really produce a lot more crops, right? You can do multiple floors and it's a little bit efficient but to your point, it takes energy and sun and
Yeah,
you wonder how that. And then I think the other trend I'd maybe like to get your perspective on is call it the what is it, the generation or the engineering of plants, different plants and different ag and like I don't know, a corn and a pumpkin or something like that, right? Like there's these strains of there's ways you can engineer plants for different outcomes, right? And maybe just your thought. I mean, I think it's fascinating, right? That
sure,
you can start to mix and mold, and even like for medicines and things like that, right? There's
sure.
interesting. What's your take on just call it engineering plants and what's your thoughts? Just your general thoughts on that?
I love it. One and two, I think from a consumer perspective, we've been hung up a lot on genetic engineering or editing of plants. And we have that GMO stamp, which whoever marketed or named that genetically modified organism was just totally wrong. I mean, it just was the worst thing you could do. We've been engineering plants from the beginning of time. If you go to in the Bible and if you believe in that at all, or that it's some historical collection, what they were eating then, we're not eating now. Because we've taken, I mean, we have such a variety of plants and fruits and vegetables that we have engineered. Now, we didn't do it scientifically, but just over time with breeding. So all the genetic engineering, a lot of it is just fast tracking breeding. That's one way to
Yeah.
look at it. And so and I always like to differentiate the GMO versus a gene edit like CRISPR. So a lot of people have heard the word CRISPR. A GMO, which sometimes it's got kind of a bad label, we've had the scientists have to insert like some foreign material to make that change. A gene edit, they're not introducing any foreign material, and that's why it's not a GMO. So there's a company that's knocking the allergens out of a peanut. So peanut has
Mm.
hundreds of proteins. Three are
I got two
deadly.
kids that are allergic to peanuts. Two
Okay.
kids are allergic. Yeah.
Of all the proteins, hundreds of proteins in peanuts, three are deadly. RH1, 2, and 3. One, if you're allergic, will cause a coma. One causes anaphylactic shock. The other causes death if you're allergic. So, can we gene edit? And that's exactly what's happening, and just remove those proteins. That's a
Totally.
wonderful use of CRISPR in gene editing. So, of course, yeah, huge. We'll see huge gains there. On the people side, sometimes it's human side. Got a lot more regulatory challenges. We have regulatory challenges on the plant side, but many more on in human health as we look at CRISPR and gene editing. But it's here to stay. It's a very efficient way. Like I said, it's like basically fast tracking a breeding program that would take years to do, and we can do it much quicker now with CRISPR.
Yeah, the human side, that's a whole big area, right? And then on the obviously the plant side, a lot of great things happening. But I like your perspective on that, right? We've been kind of doing this since the beginning of time. It's just now more accelerated, a little bit more scientific.
Mhm.
So hey, I always love it because I have smart people on this podcast and I learn a little bit from them. All right, so let's go to investing, right? We have a diverse audience, right? We have some college kids, we have some young professionals, we have some venture folks. It's a little bit of mix of everyone.
Mhm.
And so all these exponential things going on, you've got an interesting lens. You run a successful venture capital firm in the ag tech space, but you also seen a lot. You've seen, you've done mainframe COBOL. You've seen the rise of the mainframe. And so, to our listeners, how should they think about investing? Or your insights on investing, right? Kind of growing up through your career, and then now as a venture capitalist, like what would you want to share with them? Is just kind of your in these exponential times, how should they be thinking about investing?
If they are like sitting in my chair or
Um, Yes, and right. So maybe you could, just kind of give general, or maybe you can go, hey, for those who are maybe in your 20s, hey, here's how you should think about it. Mid-career, and hey, if you're if you're in your chair,
Yeah.
however you want to roll with it.
Yeah. So I think my answer to that is around just exposure. It comes to mind right away. We have angel investors that, are invest in personal funds. You've got uh which are, I say angel investors, and I assume everybody knows that, those are just individuals investing that have a certain net worth and income to be able to do that from a Security and Exchange Commission perspective. And then you've got the funds that we're investing other people's money. At the end of the day, we're all trying to have a gain. That's why it's called investment. It's not a donation. And so it's in picking the right horses, I always say. It's what it's about. And for me, when I look at it, so if you're thinking about investing, it doesn't matter what the industry is. To me, it's who's running that company. Um, and so when I say the word exposure, the more you know about that industry that you're investing in, the better your odds are or probability of success. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get a return, some added money on the investments that we're making. And so number one to me is team, no matter what. If I'm making an individual investment as an angel investor or out of our fund, that is the most important thing. Who's running this entity to get it to success? Because you're not doing it. If you, by the nature of investing, you're giving money to someone else to do it, to get the work done. Now you can sit on a board, but you're not running the company. And so
Totally.
the people that get selected that I've seen wonderful technologies that have mediocre teams that don't make it. And I've seen really wonderful teams take like a mediocre technology and make it. And
Yeah.
so I'm always looking for founders too, or teams that have had some struggle. If life has been completely easy, you may not hang in there when things get tough. But if you've had to live through a little bit of struggle, chances are you know how to do it and you're going to continue to do it. So for me, that's a big thing is who's running the company. Then the others on the diversity side. I mean, we get so much anymore. Like we may not care. A lot of people don't care about diversity, but you look at all the financial planners, they're still diversifying a portfolio. So to me, that means even in investing, you're going to invest in, I mean, if you look at your own portfolio, one, I like people, a lot of different backgrounds on teams. And then when you get to the companies, I always think of like Polaroid, for example. Polaroid,
Yeah.
very established back in the day. They were the first ones to come up with a picture. You could take it and it was right there. And they
Yeah.
completely didn't make it when it came to the digital world, right? They
Yeah.
weren't able to
Yeah.
move
Them
that
and
way.
Kodak, right? Or them and yeah, and
Kodak.
Kodak. Yeah.
Yeah. So from an investing standpoint, you want to look at, so now if we talk about stocks or something in these large companies, you want to make sure you're investing in companies that have that kind of staying power and vision to get to the other side. And then I love startups. So my philosophy is always like the stability that can move through, and then the disruption. Those big companies, they're not disruptive. So that's where we need early stage companies that get acquired by those. And that's the wonderful thing about investing. That may be more than you wanted me to
Oh
talk
no,
about, but
that's
that's
great.
it.
And and you have a fund, so you take investments from limited partners, and then you're looking at them and you're deploying them to your point, and these startups that are really in an area you really know, right? AgTech, right? To give those limited partners a great return, on their investment. It's definitely not charity. And the one thing that maybe the listeners can appreciate is Karen every year has to face those investors at least every year, right? I mean, probably quarterly report and share your performance, right, and how you're
Yeah.
doing, right? And I always find that a humbling experience, right? And And so, yeah, so you invest on others' behalf, but you're accountable to them, and right, so that's important. Okay, so the leadership. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. There's a lot of change going on, right? And so you've had you were on the fast track for a senior executive position at Nationwide, and you went to startups, and now you're leading a venture capital firm. Maybe just maybe just a couple of your general principles on leadership. Um, and then with all this time of change, right? CRISPR plants, vertical building, data center, all over, and just AI, all that. And you look in the future, what leadership principles become more important, maybe less important, maybe super important, just maybe your maybe historical leadership, and then just what do you see with all these exponential things going on?
Yeah, I over all my years of being, managing, I don't feel like I've changed much because I really pay a lot of attention. I get back to people. I've said that before. It's industry agnostic. I think it's market agnostic. You've got to get people that you align well with. You're on the same plane from a values and culture perspective. Um, you're very communicative, like what you're on the same page from a goals perspective and motivation. And so when you have all of that, I don't think it matters what time that you're in. You've got to accomplish something. I mean, you're in a company to get things done, and you need to understand what the done is, right? And everyone's on the same page. And sometimes you got to be willing to let people go that aren't on the train, and develop folks. That's super important. I've had a super high retention rate with people like that. And it's not because I paid them more,
Yeah,
or it's because sometimes we think it's about the money, and it's not always about the money. Our
yeah,
lives are short, right? And we spend more time working than anything. And so to
yeah,
feel valued and included is, I think, from a manager standpoint, are like two of the things that's just like we have to do. Make sure people feel that way.
yeah. There's some beautiful nuggets of leadership that you shared. That I believe stand the test of time, right?
Yeah.
Like people, right? It's like from way in the beginning to leading to today to in the future, regardless of you will be leading teams of humans, and you gotta the people and the values and the culture, and then I think communicating that, right? I think we're how we communicate and the things around it. There's some changes there, and there's changes coming, but communicating there, and
Hmm.
then creating the right goals and motivation, but then I think the one is that it isn't because money is it isn't the only factor, right? But I think you touched on, you make them feel valued, right? You make your team, feel valued, including, and maybe the one thing that I've seen is like that they're building something that's beyond them, like that they're so passionate about this that they think that I'm building something that's just way beyond me, that it's transformative, and you can, as a leader, you can make them feel that, and hopefully you feel it yourself, right? Because
Right.
you also exude that confidence. I think those, to your point, I think those stand the really the test of time for leadership.
Yeah. And also, as a leader, when you talk about building something bigger than yourself, that gets back to the diversity of talent, background, experience. Um, that's where it's key to make sure we've got the right people. And that's why, as a leader, you can't have everyone just that they're like you. You can't have a team that's all alike, right?
Totally.
It takes like a village to get to where you need to get to. And as a leader, you got to be able to plug and play.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I know, you have a sports background too, right? So I think there's some strong leadership that comes from that as well. Me personally too. And that I played a little bit of college football, and did a lot in high school. I would say I tell people now I pull muscles just thinking about running that fast as I did when I was in high school. But that's for another podcast, another podcast. But Karen, I know you got a lot going on. You're in the throes of an amazing fund on the fundraising side, and also deploying, and so we're really honored that you take it and make it a priority. Come on, the Exponential Growth Podcast. How do our listeners? Well, two things. Any other thoughts you'd like to share, and then how do our listeners follow you on social and keep up with all the great things that are happening at LeVert Ventures and you?
So, one, thank you very much. I enjoyed my time with you, and a goal of for me next is to make sure we're better in from a social media standpoint, so you can follow what we're doing. So we're getting the fund close. I'm very much a like do this and then like
Yeah.
do that. And so right now I'm on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to see what's going on. And then any my only kind of parting words would be, whatever you put your mind to, you can do. I feel that, I'm a glass half full person. I feel like we our only limitation sometimes can be ourselves, and the universe is conspiring in your favor. So just do it.
That's excellent. Those amazing closing remarks. Again, Karen, thank you for jumping on. Look forward to completing our time together as part of the Recast pod and the
Yes.
program there, and we'll be in touch. Thank you again.
Thank you.